don't really know who Nas is. If he's 22, he's born in 03.
Not all of them, some of them.
I'm in the game still rapping at a high capacity. If Nas wants to smoke, come in the booth. I will rap
You don't want
circles
no
around.
smoke. He enjoying that 150 million, 200 million. He done
Okay
made.
then, so then leave me alone while I'm on the field.
You was effing with him. He wasn't bothering you.
Jim Jones was never better than Nas. Jim Jones will never be better than Nas. And this is coming from somebody that's not a Nas fan. I love Dipset. I love the Diplomats. I love Bird Gang. But we not about to start rewriting history because Jim Jones got confidence.
Jim Jones, Harlem's own, has sparked something raw, something that slices deeper than a diss track. On a seemingly regular day, during a podcast with Shannon Sharpe, Jones didn't just question Nas's relevance. He rewrote hip-hop history with one reckless statement. In a voice laced with defiance, he claimed that he, Jim Jones, was more influential than Nas.
I never got to, did I ever got to see Nas? I never got to sit down and have a conversation with Nas and things like that. I had called you about it and things like that. That was like, still one of the people that I never got to have a conversation throughout my history of rap and things like that. I think I would love to have a conversation with Nas. I wouldn't know if he knows it, but Nas was one of my all-time favorite rappers coming up and things like that.
I heard you say that.
Since the barbecue and things like that, like he really put the whole dope boy rap, crack hustler, get fresh rap into perspective before anybody else.
Not just relevant, important to the culture. And like that, the room shifted. Not with applause, but with a stunned silence, the kind that travels through social feeds faster than sound. For those watching the game closely, this wasn't just clout chasing. This was personal, generational, and charged with decades of lyrical warfare.
Recently saw a clip on Instagram where a young kid was comparing you to Nas and saying that you got
that's my young boy.
big hits.
He's wild.
Yo, he looked to you. He learned how to wear the BB Simon belt from you. He got his swag. Like, how crazy is that? Because in my era, you know what I'm saying, Nas is like a god.
In my era.
What made it sting wasn't just the statement. It was the certainty in Jim's tone. The man wasn't flinching. He doubled down, face steady, voice clear.
I admired Nas, but remember Nas' first record, The Barbecue, came out when I was in 11th grade.
Yes.
So Nas was my idol when I was young. Like you did, came to dressing, the wordplay, the music, everything. I was a superior Nas fan. Period. I'd never take that away from him. But then as I got in the game, you got to realize that your rivals would be idols, and not to take anything away from that. I developed my own style in my own lane that these kids start to gravitate towards the same way I gravitated towards Nas when I was younger and things like that. It's a whole different generation.
The world may see Nas as the golden child of Queensbridge, the poet of Illmatic, the architect of God's Son, but to Jim, that crown had aged. It belonged to a time that today's generation, born after the year 2000, doesn't even recognize.
I came into light and started going crazy that these kids love me. They don't really know who Nas is. If he's 22, he's born in 03.
Not all of them, some of them though. But
you know what I mean?
A lot of them though.
Jones believed the streets follow him now, not Nas. The irony? Jim Jones used to revere Nas, publicly. Just a year ago, he was gushing about the Queen's legend on other platforms. He called Nas one of his all-time favorites, the very man who brought the dope boy rap aesthetic into perspective. He admired the poetry, the image, the influence. But when Fat Joe stirred the pot with a well-placed comparison between the two, Jones switched lanes with no blink.
No, me, Jim Jones. No diplomats, no nobody else. Me, Jim Jones. Check my track record, then check everybody else's track record. Then go to the billboards and check all my entries, then check all them entries and and I'm not taking nothing away from nobody, but I hear the comparisons and then be trying to act funny when it comes. No, I've been spanking a lot of this about the industry. I've been putting on.
Suddenly, admiration turned to self-elevation. Suddenly, Nas wasn't the blueprint. He was background noise.
Can I ask you a question, Jim?
Mm-hmm.
You smoke, right?
Yeah.
Were you smoking when you said you better than Nas?
I might have been a little bit.
It wasn't just about music anymore. As Jim kept talking, he made it personal, again. He brought up old beefs, ones rooted in the early 2000s when Nas, unprompted, dissed Cameron and ignited the Dipset versus Nas saga. Back then, Jim wasn't some rookie in the wings. He was front and center.
I'm way more influential than Nas, and I don't care what nobody say. I know I made a little boo-boo when you talk about the sales and all this type of don't feel like getting into that rhetoric about where I started and where he started.
Well, you said that
but listen, Nas was nice when I was in high school. When I was in 10th grade, Nas came out. Nas was dope. We appreciated him. He had a little bit run.
Threatening to smack the kufi off Nas and airing out grievances on tracks like We Fly High. The vitriol wasn't new. But hearing Jim now, you'd think it was all water under the bridge. Until he opened his mouth again, and this time he was on Shannon Sharpe's turf.
But Nas always came up second to Jay and DMX and all these other people. Like,
Ain't no shame in that. There a lot of mofos came up second to Tom Brady.
He never had that type of influence on us, except for his first album. I already told you, I used to want to dress like Nas because he had a lot of fresh clothes that the hustlers used to wear, and we used to see him on TV. He had one of the illest albums of all time. And then in high school when he had the barbecue and shit like that. So I'm a real fan of Nas, but he kind of lost me after the movie Belly and shit like that.
Shannon, athlete, media titan, and unbothered voice of reason, wasn't having any of it. He asked Jim straight, "Were you high when you said you were better than Nas?" Jim smirked. Maybe, but he didn't walk it back. Instead, he built a mountain out of a molehill, brick by brick, explaining how kids today only recognize him, not Nas. In Jim's eyes, he's the one who still moves culture.
Bro, you been at this thing, but lyrically, I'm gonna keep it a stack with you.
Yeah,
Y'all
but look how you dress. Look how you dress. You don't even be in the same places I be in. The
But
things
I-
that we listen to.
I can be in the church house. You can't emphasize lyrics. I don't know who told you that. Now look, I know you on that good stuff, but you're not seeing Nas.
He's the one the youth emulate, belt buckles and all. But Shannon wasn't buying it. With a controlled fire, he dismantled Jim's claims piece by piece, not just challenging his bars, but his bravado. He poked at Jim's fashion sense, his gym antics, and most of all, his logic. This wasn't about hits or Billboard. This was about legacy.
You got a bunch of 40 and 50-year-olds in their panties because I said I'm better than
It don't
Nas.
matter.
Look at you. Look at you.
Nobody from Dipset gonna take you over Nas. And nobody from the Diplomats but you.
I got
Hold on, Jim. Hold on.
That shirt too
Hold on.
That
Jimmy.
You want to go back to I really mean it? I really mean it started. We could go back to the history, bro.
But you didn't even say that,
bro.
Jim wasn't just climbing a hill. He was trying to plant his flag on top of a mountain he didn't build. Meanwhile, someone else was watching. Quietly, strategically. 50 Cent never spoke Jim's name. He didn't have to. One cryptic post on Instagram, a decades-old federal transcript, and the entire internet lit up like a flare gun. No captions, just receipts. 50 wasn't clapping back with words, he was pulling the strings. Old wiretaps resurfaced. Memes of Individual One made their rounds, and fans didn't need much help to connect the dots. Jim was back under the microscope, and this wasn't about clout. This was about credibility. If you know, you know.
I'm still playing at a high level.
Hey,
You better check my record,
you
heard?
jumping up and
I'm
down.
still playing at a high level. I'm rapping at a high level. You better check my stats, bro. I will run circles around Nas rapping right. I will run circles around Nas rapping right now. Right now, I will run Saturn around Nas right now rapping.
Back in 2018, during Tekashi 6ix9ine's infamous federal trial, a voice on a wiretapped call was allegedly Jim Jones's.
This the biggest podcast you ever been on. Do you know the podcast you been on bigger than this one?
Hold on. We on topic.
I'm not a podcaster.
This is what I do.
You see
Name
you
a podcast you been on bigger than this one. When you get big, you get invited to Club Shay Shay.
This is what I do.
Nas get invited to Club Shay Shay.
The name Individual One appeared in court documents, and though Jim was never charged, the streets started whispering. Fast forward to now. 50's strategic reposts reignited that flame. The implication wasn't subtle. Why didn't Jim get indicted when others did?
You gotta start buying baggy your clothes, big fella. You too big, man.
You talk about you in the gym. Now you want to get me? You want me to see me in the gym?
Oh, we can do that.
Since you like to talk that ish, now come see me in the gym.
We talking about working out. We talking about working out or strength. What we talking about? Working out or strength?
Work however you want to do it.
We talking about
since you got money.
And we talking about
put your money where your mouth is.
So you talking about working out?
Run them stacks.
You talking about working out? I burn you. You talking about working out or strength? Because you probably can lift a lot more than me.
Whatever.
You're bigger than me. You're probably stronger than me.
Whatever.
But if you talk about working out, I'll burn you.
This ain't what you do. This ain't what you want. You are doing good when you talk about Nas and Jada. You don't want to see this.
Jim tried to pivot. He flexed in the gym. He called out Shannon to a workout battle. He even tried to clown Shannon for his wardrobe, but none of that could shift the conversation. Every attempt to change the topic only made things worse. He told fans to check the Billboard charts. He invited comparisons. He said he'd run lyrical circles around any artist from his era, including NAS. But stats don't lie, and when fans pulled up the numbers, the contrast was brutal. NAS has been dropping critically acclaimed albums consistently, King's Disease, Magic, multiple Grammy wins, while Jim's output has barely made a dent. The disrespect wasn't just unwarranted, it was surreal. And the silence from NAS, deafening. Not a word, not a tweet, not a bar. That silence spoke louder than any track could. Because NAS didn't need to respond. The world had already decided.
When it got, honestly, I can't, if it was like Jim Jones, imagine putting a pen to paper to write about him. He was so nice. He was so nice about him. How did you do that? What's the first sentence? What the fuck do you write about him? I'm not anxious to hear the Jim Jones diss record. I'm like, yo. The used to have a little nervous was like B.I.G., Pop, right? Even Cannabis, like Eminem, used to have you like, if we go at it, dog, we gotta go hard. You know what I'm saying? But these Jim Jones, like, I respect you getting your money. You're like, exactly, right?
But that's where the danger lies. When a man like 50 Cent goes quiet after setting off a fuse, you know the explosion's not far behind. And Jim, whether he realizes it or not, has walked into a battlefield where lyrics won't save him. Reputation will. As Jim Jones kept his chest puffed out in the gym, flexing muscles and throwing challenges at Shannon Sharpe like it was some high-stakes locker room spat, the rest of the culture watched, amused, confused, and increasingly unconvinced. The noise was loud, but the foundation beneath it, paper-thin. Because while Jones barked into microphones about influence, relevance, and streaming numbers, the reality sat in the cold, hard silence of NAS, unshaken, unbothered, unmoved.
I'm hiding out in Texas. Please, whatever you do, don't tell them I'm in San Antonio. Don't tell them I'm staying at the Four Seasons. Don't tell them, please don't tell them, man, because there's just so much pressure on me right now. I don't know what to do.
And looming over it all was 50 Cent, the ultimate orchestrator of chaos, watching from the shadows with a smirk that always precedes something vicious. Jim's new strategy was pure misdirection. He spun his ego into branding, calling it marketing genius, saying every viral clip boosted his streams. He turned a cultural L into a business win, or tried to. But his logic couldn't outrun the internet. Fans pulled the receipts. NAS, 3 years older, still sells out Madison Square Garden, still wins Grammys, still drops albums that get standing ovations from critics and listeners alike. Meanwhile, Jim had been dropping music too. Yes, but no one noticed. Not because it wasn't decent, but because it wasn't NAS. Yet Jim, head down and voice up, kept digging. He posted again, "If you 40 and up arguing with me about NAS, you already lost." The implication? That NAS was a relic and he was the present. But the fans weren't fooled. They remembered. They remembered when Jones idolized NAS, when he tried to get a seat at the grown man table and didn't get the invite. And now, with 50 Cent reminding everyone of old transcripts and dusty headlines, the smoke Jim tried to puff turned into something thicker, something he couldn't blow away. Because 50 doesn't troll for fun. He plays chess. When he resurrected the individual one, label, a name from the federal documents of Tekashi's trial, it wasn't just petty. It was deliberate. It was a reminder. Jim's name might have been left out of official indictments, but it was never cleared in the court of public opinion. The streets have long memories, the blogs remember, and 50 Cent? He never forgets. This wasn't about defending NAS. It was about reminding the world that some of the loudest voices ducked the hardest truths. And when Jim tried to fire back, it fell flat. He mocked the rumors, reposted throwback pics, and laughed it off. "Why you keep lying?" he typed. But it wasn't enough. Not when the whispers started up again. Not when old clips of Nas talking about Jones with a grin, practically dismissing him mid-sentence, started going viral. Imagine writing a diss about Jim Jones, Nas had once said. Like, what the are you rapping about, dude? That clip wasn't just shade, it was surgical. Because to Nas, Jones wasn't a rival, he was noise. And that's the worst kind of insult, when your enemy doesn't see you as a threat, only as a punchline. But this was never a two-way fight. While Jim was shadowboxing in front of podcast cameras and chasing clout under gym lights, Nas didn't flinch, he didn't post, he didn't rap, he didn't need to. The culture had already responded for him.
Yeah, Jimmy boy, you should have never brought this up. Y'all are only 3 years apart, and Nas is just like murdering you. You asked us to look up the stats, and here they are. Like Jim Jones, like you got a couple songs. I mean, like literally, it's a couple. But we're talking about Nas. Let me show y'all Nas's last projects. Nas been getting it in since 2018. Jimmy, when the last time you put out an album? Oh, would you look at that? You have been dropping music. You've really been dropping music. But nobody's heard it. Nobody's listening, bro.
When Shannon Sharpe, a man with no mixtape, no album, no rap resume, took it upon himself to defend Nas with the kind of passion you'd expect from a Queensbridge native, the weight of the moment shifted. This wasn't just about music. It was about legacy, respect, lineage. And while Jim went all in, calling out anyone over 40, trying to bait Nas or any OG rapper into a booth battle, he forgot one thing. 50 Cent doesn't need a booth. He has Instagram. He has history. He has information. And when he reminded the world of that wiretap, of Tekashi naming Jim as part of the 9 Trey Bloods, it didn't feel like old beef. It felt like new evidence, like something dark bubbling beneath the surface. And the most haunting part? Jim wasn't denying it. He wasn't challenging it. He was joking about it. But the fans weren't laughing. They were reading, rewatching, remembering. Because 50's post wasn't just a petty jab. It was a warning. So that's why they ain't pull him in. Say it ain't so, Jimmy. The kind of line that plants seeds. Seeds that grow into rumors, then whispers, then headlines. The implication was clear. Jim Jones might have escaped court charges, but he couldn't escape the truth. And 50 Cent had the luxury of letting the streets do the math. Meanwhile, Jim tried to pivot again. This time, he challenged Shannon Sharpe to an actual physical match. He dared him to meet in the gym. "Bring money, we outside. My sneakers tied," he wrote. The desperation was loud now. It wasn't about Nas anymore. It wasn't even about music. It was about proving dominance in any arena, hoping the optics would distract from the truth. But all it did was expose the cracks. Because while Jim was busy shadowboxing with podcast hosts, the people he really needed validation from, his peers, the streets, the real gatekeepers, were quiet, just like Nas. And that silence echoed louder than any bar. No rebuttal, no diss track, no viral freestyle, just calm, controlled, measured calm. And in that silence, Jim Jones flailed. He accused older fans of being stuck in the past, of not understanding marketing, of failing to see the new wave. But the numbers don't lie. Nas has fans across generations. His recent albums charted, his concerts still sell. Meanwhile, Jim Jones can't spark real momentum unless it's controversy-fueled. And even then, it fades. By the end, the picture was painfully clear. Jim Jones didn't just pick a fight he couldn't win. He picked one no one wanted. Nas isn't interested, 50 isn't amused. And the fans? They're mostly embarrassed. Because what could have been a moment of reflection, of generational comparison, of shared respect, turned into a one-sided circus. And in the middle of it all, Jim is still talking, still flexing, still waiting for a response that will never come. But 50? He's the wild card. Because if he ever decides to go from Instagram captions to full-blown exposure, Jim might find out that the worst opponent isn't the one who claps back. It's the one who already knows your secrets and is just waiting for the right time to let the world hear them. By now, the noise had hit its peak. The debates were everywhere. Twitter threads unraveling like court transcripts, YouTube reactions dissecting every eyebrow raise, every flex, every post. But while Jim Jones was busy declaring himself the people's champ, the reality he was running from crept in on every scroll. He wasn't leading a new wave. He was drowning in a flash flood of his own bravado. The harder he pushed his narrative, the more the culture resisted it. Because respect in hip-hop isn't something you self-assign. It's earned, layered, voted on by time, and validated by generations. Still, Jim pushed forward. More interviews, more shade. He spun his statements as misunderstood, tried to paint himself as the underdog, the hustler who'd risen from mixtape obscurity to street legend. But he misunderstood one thing, the difference between admiration and credibility. Sure, people respected Jim's hustle. Sure, Dipset's legacy is locked in history. But legacy and longevity are not the same. And when you claim to be more influential than Nas, the man whose pen shifted the course of rap twice, you better bring more than confidence. You better bring receipts. Jim's problem was never passion, it was perspective. And when he made his boldest claim, "I will run circles around Nas, rapping right now," you could almost feel the culture pause. Not gasp, not get angry, just pause. The way you do when a friend's joke goes too far and no one laughs. The silence that followed that statement wasn't confusion, it was disbelief. Not because the audience thought Nas was invincible, but because Jim genuinely thought this was a fair fight. At this point, even Shannon Sharpe had shifted tones. He wasn't just the amused interviewer anymore. He'd turned into a mirror, holding up the uncomfortable truth to Jones in real time. "Look where you dress," Shannon said. "Look where you be." It wasn't about bars anymore. It was about belonging. Shannon didn't need to rap to dismantle Jim's argument. He just reminded the room and the world that delusion is the loudest silence in a losing argument. And while all this unfolded under bright podcast lights and comment section roasts, 50 Cent was doing what he does best. Waiting. Not lurking. Not scheming. Just waiting. Like the executioner with the blade already raised, 50 didn't need to respond. He'd already done it. The caption, the wiretap, the implication, it all hung heavy over Jim's rants. Because that was the real conversation no one wanted to address. Why did individual one walk untouched when so many others didn't? The more Jim laughed it off, the less people were laughing with him, especially when old posts from 50 resurfaced. The ones where 50, in peak petty form, played scared. "I'm hiding in San Antonio. Don't tell them where I'm staying." It was a joke, but it wasn't. Because beneath the punchline was a loaded question, and everyone knew it. 50 was saying what the prosecutors wouldn't, what the fans had speculated, what hip-hop has whispered for years. You can laugh at it, you can ignore it, but you can't erase it. Jim tried. He posted photos of his past glory, of Bird Gang days, of Dipset's peak. He captioned them with nostalgia, defiance, and the occasional shot at 50. "Why you lying?" he said. "I'm going back to sleep." But sleep doesn't erase history, and history doesn't forget the quiet moments. Especially when one man's silence, Nas, spoke louder than every podcast combined. In the end, Nas never responded. Not once. No freestyle, no verse, not even a meme. And somehow, that did more damage than any track ever could. Because silence from a master isn't absence, it's authority. While Jim scrambled for clout and 50 threw strategic jabs, Nas let the weight of his legacy do the talking. The same legacy that includes one of the greatest debut albums in music history. The same pen that crafted songs studied in classrooms, the same presence that fills arenas decades deep into a career. And maybe that's what stung the most for Jim. Not that he couldn't reach Nas, but that Nas never had to reach down. He just watched, quietly, confidently, uninterested. Because when you're really the culture, you don't need to chase relevance. You are relevance. And no podcast mic, no flashy gym outfit, no billboard screenshots can take that away. So as the saga faded, what remained was a cautionary tale, not about beef or bars or wiretaps, but about self-awareness. Jim Jones didn't just challenge Nas, he challenged time. He tried to rewrite history with hype, forgetting that hip-hop doesn't move off noise, it moves off truth. And the truth? Nas didn't just win. He never even had to show up.